Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Youth Have a Voice podcast. If you're new here, my name is Feolami Joseph, and I am the host of this podcast. Today, I'm going to be doing something slightly different from how the episodes have been so far, but I'm really excited for today's episode. So, as you know, we're very big through this channel, through this podcast. We are very big on youth empowerment, and I was privileged to be sent a book by a company which focuses on youth empowerment and youth leadership and how to basically navigate being a young person. And that is exactly what I'm going to be doing in today's episode. So, today we're going to be reviewing a book called Navigating Your Teenage Years by Leap Africa. So, if you don't know what Leap Africa is a non-profit organization that is based in Lagos, Nigeria, and it is a youth-focused leadership development organization committed to raising leaders that will transform Africa through interventions for young people that bridges the gaps in leadership, education, employability, and entrepreneurship. So, Leap Africa has been in existence for about 21 years, and they have been making so many impacts across Lagos, Nigeria, and the whole of Africa as a whole. And I'm really excited to be collaborating with them for today's video. So, this book, Navigating Your Teenage Years, when I read it, I felt it was a really amazing book. So, I'm going to read the back of the book to show you what it says. So, Navigating Your Teenage Years is a Leap Africa publication, and it says, this publication seeks to help teenagers navigate the myriad of problems attributed mostly to their coming of age. The focus is on educating teenagers to attain self leadership as a means of realizing their potential through self awareness, broadening their minds, and thereafter surpassing the limitations placed on them by society. This book is based on the three thematic areas finding self, and leading change, and draws on stories of some remarkable young people and Leap Africa's outstanding alumni. By following the lessons and tips from this book, readers can take actions that will transform themselves and their communities. So, this book has about 11 chapters and the book has approximately 177 pages. So I would be reading some of my favorite stories from the book, and from what I have seen so far, I would say that this Navigating Your Teenage Years book is a really important book for basically sharing tips that teenagers can use as they get older. And I think one thing I really appreciate about the book is that it takes stories from people who are really known in society. For example, there was a story of Malala, there was a story of Ben Carson, and then it brings it back to people who are young just like us. So talking about Bolanle Olukoni, talking about Blessing Abang, people like this. That was so basically the book was an interlink between those who are very, very, very well known in society and then those who are just like us who were young people and they started from the grassroots, and it makes it be on a more relatable level because I feel like for young black people, for young African people, where you see people who have been able to achieve and accomplish things from you when they were about your age, it makes it more relatable. So, one of my favorite pages was page 12, which I will be reading out. So, basically, I'm just going to be reading some of my favorite excerpts and some of my favorite bits from the book. And I hope you guys end up reading the book too. So, page 12, actually, first of all, I'll be reading out what all the chapters were about, just so you have an understanding of what the book is about. So, chapter 1 talks about self awareness and self identity. Chapter 2 talks about discovering purpose, which is basically the vision and mission of your life. Chapter 3 talks about self confidence and finding your voice. Chapter 4 talks about living on purpose. Chapter 5 talks about emotional intelligence. Chapter 6 talks about self care, mind, soul, body, and spirit. Chapter 7 talks about choosing a purposeful career. Chapter 8 talks about thinking skills. Chapter 9 talks about communication. Chapter 10 talks about personal projects, and last but not least, chapter 11 talks about pathways. So, basically, before I go on to some of my favorite chapters and some of my favorite pages, I believe that these things are basically different gems that young people need as they navigate through their teenage years. As a young person myself, I feel like books like this are really important for young people to basically develop themselves. So, if you're a young person who is listening to me right now, or if you are a parent who is looking at a book that maybe you would want your child to read to basically navigate through teenage years, maybe if they are just starting out as a teenager or you want them to be better leaders, better teenagers, I'll definitely recommend this book for your child. So, page 12 is part of chapter 1, and basically, in page 12, they started from discovering talents. So I'll be starting from page 12. Okay, and I'll just read an excerpt from page 12. Having talent does not replace hard work, as most talents require training, practice, and hard work over time to be mastered. It is popularly said that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, and this is almost always true. While we all have a natural ability to do something, failure to work hard to develop that talent will usually place us below those who have put in the time and effort to master the skill, despite not being born with it. So, this page I just read talks about self awareness and self identity, and it basically went on to speak on how you can find yourself and how you also need to put in the work to be able to accomplish things, and basically how young people can find themselves. So, there was a story of a very popular lady called Bolanle Olukoni, and it was basically sharing the story of her life and how she got into presenting and basically linking that story to how you can be as a teenager. I really felt connected to that particular story. So I would also be reading page 13. um I'll be reading a part of page 13. So, working hard should not be a hindrance because it is a requisite to success in life, and almost any skill can be acquired through focus, time, and effort. While talent plus hard work spells leadership in any field, it is important to note that self awareness is comparable to a whole package deal. Discovering your talent, putting in the hard work, and consistently working towards becoming more self aware will make you an effective leader who can communicate, have empathy, share vision, and work well with others. So, something I really like about this book is that um, sometimes some young people think of leadership as being something that is very far away, or discovering yourself as something that happens. Maybe some people even think, okay, maybe when I finish from high school I can discover myself, or let me finish from university and then I know who I am. But it makes you understand and realize that as you are young, regardless of how old or young you are, there are different tips and different gems that will help you discover yourself and navigate through your teenage years. So that's something I really, really appreciate about the book. So some of the key takeaways I have is that leaders come from all ages, and self leadership is one of the first steps that would help you to become a good leader. So there was a preface. This was even before the main chapter. It was XI. Let me open that page. It was part of the introduction. Okay, so who is a leader and what is leadership? When you think of a leader, the first thing that probably comes to mind is perhaps a president, company executive, a principal, or a governor. Different societies have different views on leadership, including how leaders are developed, who should be leaders, and or what makes a person a leader. You've probably heard the phrase children are the leaders of tomorrow or future leaders. And while these are not wrong, it tends to imply that you must become an adult to fit into a certain group to be a leader or to start preparing for leadership, like I just spoke about. It has the effect of postponing certain responsibilities and attributes one must inculcate from a young age. You must now be thinking, does this mean I've been writing about leadership or who a leader is all this time? Is it possible for you to be a leader? If a leader is not some old, balding, or rich, very experienced man or a woman who makes all the decisions, who then is a leader? Is a leader not someone with great charisma or with great speaking abilities who can take charge or lead the masses? These are all correct, especially as they fit into certain societal stereotypes of what leadership is. The problem, however, is that it propagates a stereotypical view of who a leader is. This therefore allows young people to procrastinate on developing leadership attributes early on. A leader does not necessarily fit into any biological or physical stereotypical profile. A leader is someone who does more than just lead people or make all the decisions. In fact, one definition of leadership states that it is the art of motivating oneself and a group of people to act towards achieving a common goal. Notice how this does not include any biological, physical, or psychological attributes. So, this introduction basically sums up how or the reasons why young people can't become leaders, because it's not based on your age, it's not based on your height, it's not based on your physical attributes. It's basically just based on you and the values that you possess that would navigate you becoming a good leader, regardless of your age. And everyone can become a leader. Leaders are brought up, they can be trained, so you can also be trained towards being a leader. Another page I really liked was page 57. So I'll be opening that page before we wrap up for today. So page 57 was a part of chapter 4, and it basically was speaking about even on purpose. So a reason why this chapter was really important to me was because it spoke about the late Chadwick Boseman, who was the star actor of Black Panther, and it also interlinked it with basically how you can find your purpose and find yourself regardless of things you may be going through in your life. So also talking about how to set your goals. So I'll start from how to set goals and work towards them. Setting goals involves putting and breaking them into immediate and long term sections and giving yourself timelines to achieve them. You can have immediate ones like practice for 5 hours or read on a particular topic. Your goals should be realistic and add up to the bigger picture. When things do not go as planned, keep trying. There might be things you want to achieve or get that you won't. There might also be tests you've taken that you did not pass. You need to understand that it is okay not to have it all. It is okay if you did not score the desired mark on your test. What matters is your response to that denial and failure. Do you sit back and brood, or do you remember your goals and get to work on improving yourself? Never stop trying, even when you do not get what you want. Live on a purpose like Chadwick, who turned rejections into inspirations. According to him, sometimes you need to feel the pain and sting of defeat to activate the real passion and purpose that God predestined inside of you. You might battle with imposter syndrome and the feeling that you are a fraud. You might also feel incompetent. Focus on things that are going well. Always do more than is expected of you, whether anyone is watching or not. Having a life of purpose means that you have all your choices and directions shaped by it. One of the most important things about living on purpose is guarding what you think about. It also involves censoring the information you let yourself get access to, because it all starts with the mind, be it self doubt or self confidence. Then there's a little section that says sometimes you need to get knocked down before you can figure out what your fight is and how you need to fight it. So before I go on to speak about what I just read, another thing I really like about this book is that it's very interactive. So in the book there are different pages. So when you get to the end of each chapter, there's basically an action plan that you have to like basically fill out yourself. So based on what the book spoke about or what the chapter spoke about, there's a place for you. I will basically refer to it as a reflection part of the book, like a reflection journal, but it's referred to as an action plan. So basically, through this, what you now have to do is write your own opinions and write your own feedback on basically what that particular chapter spoke about. And I think it's really important because it helps you journal it and it helps you actually meditate on what you read more than just passively reading something and then scanning through it. So it's an interactive book. As you read a chapter, you end up reflecting on what you read, and I think that is also really important. The chapter that I just finished reading, as a young person, I feel like because there's so much happening at the same time, and in this era of social media, there's so many people telling you move this way. People are like on level 5, you may think you're on level 2. Someone's level 1,000 is your level 1. So there are so many opinions coming from different people. So being able to understand your life's purpose and work towards it is really important, which is something I really liked about this book. And I really love that they took the story of the late Chadwick Boseman to highlight this, because I think as a young person, almost everyone, if you haven't watched Black Panther, what are you doing actually? Because I think almost everyone should have watched Black Panther, and Chadwick Boseman was a very inspiring man. So I particularly love this chapter because it spoke about him and the legacy he was able to leave behind. So, despite the fact that he unfortunately passed away at a young age, he was able to find his life's purpose at a young age and inspire people. He's still inspiring people today. Black Panther literally changed the internet, it changed Disney, it changed the world, it changed the globe. So yeah, regardless of the fact that he wasn't here for a very long time, him finding his purpose early on, despite what happened to him, is an inspiration to young people, and that was another reason why I really liked that chapter. What chapter I really liked is chapter 7. So, as you may know, if you have been listening to me, I run an online community called College Guide Africa, and it has a lot to do with higher education, career development. And a reason why I particularly like this chapter is because it talks about how to choose a purposeful career. And they took the story of two people. As I said before, there's always an interlink with someone who is relatively more known and a young person you can relate to because they are on a similar level to you. So I took the story of Marseille Martin. If you watch Blackish, if you watch Little, you know who Marseille Martin is. And then it also took the story of someone called Fonto Ibioye. So I'll just be reading their two stories just so you have an idea of what the book is like, because I've taken some of the helpful tips about the book. So now I'm reading the two stories of Marseille and Fonto Ibioye. So for Marseille's story, Marseille Martin landed her first commercial at the age of 5 in 2014, and at the age of 10, she played the character of Diane Johnson on the ABC sitcom Blackish. She made her first film debut in 2016 when she played a leading role in the film titled Melody 1963. Love Has to Win. In 2019, she starred in her first studio feature film titled Little. Marseille was also the executive producer of this film, and this made her the youngest African American and the youngest person to produce a movie. She is the award winner of the 2019 BET Young Stars Award and other awards. With this knowledge, if you are asked about the career of Marseille Martin, you will say she's an actor and producer. You can also recognize the training she has gotten from the different roles in the movies she has starred in. So basically, Marseille, I think Marseille is a year older than me, and honestly, I have always been inspired by her life. So this was also really interesting to see in the book how it brought stories of people you know from maybe TV shows or people you've heard of, and then you can basically hear more about their lives. Now I'm reading the story about Fonto. So when Fonto Ibioye told her aunt she wanted to go to makeup school, her aunt thought it was an irresponsible decision. This was because she had studied accounting at Covenant University. She wasn't discouraged when it didn't work out. She tried again during her National Youth Service year. This time, she paid the fee by herself in installments. In reading about beauty, Fonto noticed that all the books she read only talked about physical beauty, and she wanted to change that. She started sending beauty tips that focused on beauty from within to people on BlackBerry Messenger (BBM). If you had a BlackBerry, then you probably know what BlackBerry Messenger is. So I'm sure Funso's story started maybe around 2012, 2013. The feedback received from these messages over time was what encouraged her to write the book Beautified. This also led to the creation of the Beautified Network, an initiative that enables women to discover and fulfill their God given purpose. She started by organizing gatherings with teenage girls from her church in her living room. A purposeful career impacts others. Funso chose a career that aligned with her purpose of changing the concept of beauty. She quit her job as an accountant 3 years after graduation to become an interior designer. Through her network, she organizes events and projects to help women achieve their dream and reveal their beauty from within. So, as an African teenager who was probably raised in Africa, a problem some teenagers may have. So, I was lucky, or I am lucky, to have supportive parents who supports me on the different initiatives and different pathways I want to go into. But I know that this isn't necessarily the case for everyone. So, if you were raised in Nigeria, in a typical Nigerian home, I was lucky not to be raised like that, but from the experiences of some people I know, most of the time, the only options available to Nigerian students or Africans, sometimes depending on what part you were raised from, is that you must either be a lawyer, you must either be a doctor, or you must be an engineer. And because computer science has become more rampant over the last couple of years, something that has added on to this list is that you must be a um computer scientist or basically work in the IT, the tech industry. So a lot of people decide that, or actually, a lot of people realize that this isn't what they're passionate about. I remember I saw a TikTok maybe a couple of months ago. I think there was this girl who was studying, was it something related to the medical field? I don't remember what she was studying, but she was studying something related to the medical field, but she wanted to be a fashion designer. That was her passion. And she felt bad that she had spent maybe 6 or 7 years in university. She's schooling in Nigeria. She spent maybe 6 or 7 years in university, and she realized that that wasn't the pathway that she wanted, because she wanted to be a fashion designer, but her father didn't let her become one. So being able to choose a career is very important. And I'll also be reading another section from this chapter. The difference, and the section talks about the difference between a career and a job. So both terms are often used interchangeably, but there are distinct differences between having a job and having a career. A job can be the work you do to meet your financial needs, sometimes something you can do to earn money. It could be a task or a series of tasks. It presents little room for professional development and opportunities, and is not as fulfilling as a career. On the other hand, a career is long term. When you have a career, you get to do different things due to change in job descriptions as you progress, build skills, gain long term financial security, and learn daily to develop professionally and personally. It is a more difficult process as it involves you going beyond the present. So, another thing I liked about this chapter is that it talks about why it is important to choose a career purposefully. And now I'll be moving on to a chapter that is really important and is really relatable amongst Gen Z and young people, which is the future of work. So, as you already know, if you have been on social media, work has basically changed this dynamic. I think when the pandemic erupted, it basically became a whole different ball game, because remote work became more popular, because there are platforms like Zoom, there are platforms like Microsoft Teams, there are platforms like Google Meet. So it basically changed the whole face of work as a whole. And with the rise of TikTok, social media influencing like skyrocketed. I mean, they've always been YouTubers, they've always been influencers, but then TikTokers really took off in 2020. And TikTok is a very lucrative way, social media has been a very lucrative way that people make money these days. So, the future of work, I'll basically just be, it's a quite a long chapter, so I'll basically just be running through it. So, with the workforce transitioning to remote work and the falling estimates of business travels and meetings as its results, one might ask, what is the future of work? There are three scenarios for the future of work. There is the blue world, which is the corporate one, the green world that focuses on the environment, and the orange world, which is interested in the replacement of human labor with automation. There has been a need for environmental and economic efficiency, which will impact the way we work in the coming years. People are looking towards green firms to introduce innovations that would help influence their behaviors in embracing sustainability. The skills demanded in the workforce are now different from what we knew them to be. Going forward, different Going forward, workers may need to shift occupations and learn new skills to remain employed and increase their prospects. So, this chapter also goes into the different forms of how to improve your employability. So, some of the skills they listed were social media, technology skills, e commerce, health, design. So, basically, building skills in these aspects would help you as the workforce is transitioning to the new era. And I'm sure maybe in the next decade or the next 2 decades, there'll be a complete transformation of how we know the workforce. So basically, as a young person, you always just need to be up on your game and basically just understand how trends work. Do your research. The internet is free. You can find things on the internet every day that basically help you as you transition through the workforce and basically as the world is changing as a whole. So, as we round up, I will just be speaking on the last chapter and then I'll give my general overview of what I think the book is about. Okay, so as we round up, I'll be speaking on the last two chapters. These are also chapters I really enjoyed because it speaks about personal projects and then it speaks about pathways. So, if you are not aware already, I think I've mentioned this a couple of times already, but I run an online community called College Guide Africa, and College Guide Africa focuses on two SDGs for now. I'm passionate about the two SDGs, and I've linked that into College Guide Africa. So those are SDGs 4 and SDGs 8. So if you don't know what the SDGs are, the SDGs are Sustainable Development Goals, and this was implemented by the United Nations in I think 2015. And the aim is that by 2030, the world should have accomplished 17 sustainable goals. So SDG 4 stands for quality education, and SDG 8 stands for sustainable economic growth. So, why I really like chapter 10 is because it's showing young people that they too can have projects that they can work on. Actually, in the book, it actually goes deep into speaking on what all the SDGs stand for. So I'll just read that if this is your first time you are being exposed to what this is. So goal 1 stands for no poverty, goal 2 stands for zero hunger, goal 3 stands for good health and well being, goal 4 stands for quality education, goal 5 stands for gender equality, goal 6 stands for clean water and sanitation, goal 7 stands for affordable and clean energy, goal 8 stands for decent work and economic growth, goal 9 stands for industry, innovation and infrastructure, goal 10 stands for reduced inequalities, goal 11 stands for sustainable cities and communities, goal 12 stands for responsible consumption and production, goal 13 stands for climate action, goal 14 stands for life below water, goal 15 stands for life on land, goal 16 stands for peace, justice, and strong institutions, and goal 17 stands for partnerships to achieve the goals. So, as a young person, I feel like young people are what the world needs to push these goals further. We have less than 6 years to accomplish the SDGs. We have less than 6 years. And although progress has been made, I know in Nigeria, for example, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. As I've navigated being on LinkedIn more, I've realized that there are a lot of young people actually who are pushing these goals. A lot of people are working actively to implement these goals in their own little ways, and I think it's really important. So the reason why I really, really enjoy or I really, really love this chapter is because it's exposing young people towards the possibilities they can have to start a project. Use me as an example. College Guide Africa is a project I started, and it's helping people, it's impacting lives. The Youth Have a Voice is the project I started, and it's helping people, impacting lives. And I'm also interlinking them with the goal so that more young people are aware and we can make progress in the world. So, as a young person, starting a project is really important. It can be a little one, it can be as a group, it can be a podcast, it can be a community, it can be a business. Just starting something that would help the environment, help people is really important. So basically, I'll just be going through briefly on how to plan and execute a project as it's written in the book. So, turning problems into opportunities requires some attention and time. The following steps will guide you in the figuring out and completing a project as an entrepreneur. So, number one, identifying the need. Number two, study the need. And basically, it basically goes into chapter and verse of how to identify the need and how to study the need. Then it goes into how to investigate an issue. You should focus on what, where, why, who, and how. Know your customers, ideate, develop and test your prototype, brand your business, raise and manage money, market your product or service, and do the business the right way. It also went into stories of a lady called Mrs. Ibuku Awoshika. She's a very popular lady in Nigeria. She's a Nigerian businesswoman and motivational speaker. I believe she was also in a movie a couple of years ago. That was actually how I was introduced to Mrs. Ibuku Awoshika. And she's a very visionary lady when it comes to being able to start projects and basically use entrepreneurship to help people and to help Nigeria as a whole. So another thing that is spoken about in this chapter are the resources needed for project execution. So from people to capital to material, basically means that you can't work alone. You need people, you need things to help you as you work on your project. So I really like this chapter because it's basically exposing young people to the different possibilities that await them if they want to start projects of their own and how they can go about it. And then last but not least, I will be going to the last chapter, which talks about pathways. So pathways, everyone's path is different, right? And I like that this book talks about that. Some people may go to school for 4 years, some people may go to school for 2 years, some people may even go to the same school and they wouldn't end up in the same path. So one person could be a social media influencer, another person could be a neurosurgeon changing the world in a way to maybe change the strategy. Someone could be an influencer who is changing the minds of young people to think in a certain aspect, think in a certain light. Someone could be an engineer, someone could be a musician who is changing the face of music as we know it. So there are different pathways to success. You should never trap yourself in a box and think that there's only one route you can ever take because everyone's route is different. And that's basically what this book speaks about or what this chapter speaks about. So there are different pathways to success. What you want to do after school is distinct from what your friend wants. Comparing yourself with family members or friends will only make you frustrated. There is no ideal or better pathway. The aspiration or career goal you have determines the path for you. As a young person, it's very important to know this because if you're comparing yourself to your sister, or if you're comparing yourself to your friend in math class or your friend in biology class who has different goals from you guys, even if you guys have the same goals, it's never going to be the same way because the way you are as a person determines how your life is going to be, right? So, as a young person, you guys can never ever be in the same pathway because everyone always has a different path. You guys may have similar pathways, but it's never going to be the same. So never ever compare yourself with other people because it's just going to make you feel very small or insecure or feel like you're not doing enough. And it eventually leads to getting burnout or just getting anxious all the time. So um, before going for a pathway plan, do your research, stay organized, and make financial plans. So, this chapter also goes into the different pathways that young people can have. So, from entrepreneurship to vocation, that's technical and freelancing, to advancing your education. So, this could be maybe getting a master's, getting a PhD, going to graduate school, So basically, there are different pathways young people have. Because I went to get a master's and my sibling maybe just did a bachelor's doesn't make me better than my sibling because my sibling has their own pathway. Do you understand what I'm saying? So basically, this chapter speaks about the importance of navigating different pathways and there are different pathways to success. Wow. So navigating your teenage years, I really enjoyed reading this book because as you already know from the title of this podcast, The Youth Have a Voice, I am very particular about empowering young people to become leaders and change makers, sharing the stories of how young people are thriving in their communities, and also inspiring you guys, the listeners, who are making changes in their own communities too. So through this book, I do believe that young people and young teenagers would be really inspired to be able to want to start things of their own. If you are a student, if you are even if you're like in your 20s, I still feel like you would get something inspirational from this book, at least one thing. Because think about it, even if you're just starting your 20s, you are maybe a teenager, maybe yesterday or a year ago. But this book, I feel like this book goes beyond teenage years. It helps you navigate your teenage years, but it also helps you as you're entering into adulthood, right? Because there are so many stories that you can pick up. There's so many things you can be motivated by, and as I said before, it interlinks people who we already know, and then young people or people who are closer in our communities, like African people, are also making a difference. So, yeah. And as I said, this book is also very interactive. So, and basically it's a prompter, so you're not completely left alone. It gives you prompters to what you can reflect on, what you can think about to help you as you read through the book. So if I was to rate this book out of 10, I would rate it a 9 out of 10 because I just really love how the book helps young people, and it's definitely a book that I would advise every teenager, every person who maybe even just started university to check out because there are so many lessons you can learn from the book. If you're a parent, I would advise you to buy this book for your kids because there are so many things you can take away that would help you even to understand your teenagers, right? Because the way you were as a teenager is different from the way um a teenager who was born in the 21st century is. So it will help you maybe even be more understanding towards your kids. And I so thank you so much, Deep Africa, for sending me this book. I really enjoyed reading it. I really enjoyed speaking about the book today. And I would definitely be recommending it to everyone who is listening. I know you guys can't see the book, but it's a white. It has so basically the cover of the book, it has like four children, four teenagers, not children, four teenagers on the book, and it's very beautifully designed. And yeah, so thank you so much, Deep Africa. Um, we love seeing youth empowerment here. We love seeing leadership, and your organization is doing a great job in ensuring that leaders are founded, leaders are developed. And yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for letting me review this book. Thank you so much for sending me the book. And if this was your first time listening to me, once again, my name is Feolami Awe Joseph, and I have been your host of this podcast. And I will see you in our next episode. So if you like this podcast episode, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Share with your family and friends. Maybe you could even purchase the book. I'll be leaving the book product details in our bio so that you can get the book and buy it for yourself. It's very affordable. So you're not going to break an arm and a leg to get the book. Even if you're not based in Nigeria, there's worldwide shipping for the Navigating Your Teenage Years book by Leap Africa. So thank you so much, and I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.